BlackRock is investing billions as we speak and pushing everyone to do more, right? And George Soros is coming out criticizing this. I thought that was fascinating.
Really fascinating. And it shows reflects, Soros's unique background. So Soros grew up in Hungary under the Nazis, and then got out before the communists could take them. But he knows what the communism is, and normally you think of George Soros as kind of a pirate on Wall Street, and he broke the British pound, and obviously he's made a lot of money, and he has been a backer of liberal Democratic Party kinds of causes, but he knows the communists are. He knows what the Communist Party is, and effectively what he was saying is, listen, Larry Fink of BlackRock, you may be a smart financial operator, but you have a blind spot. You think that this Chinese financial market is a financial market like the European or the American financial market. It's not, says George Soros. You can lose a lot of money in that market, not necessarily because of market forces, but because of Communist Party forces. It's not just Wall Street, but it's American CEOs, American political leaders, American journalists who don't grasp the true significance of the fact that China is not a Western-style market economy. It never will be.
Well, and there's also this question of, try to withdraw your investment.
Exactly. Right. Try to take your money out of China. Exactly right. I this is something that I get apoplectic about sometimes. I keep reading these articles about how the RMB, the Chinese Yuan, is going to replace the dollar as the world's main reserve currency. And I'm thinking, but wait a minute, what are the requirements of a reserve currency? Well, you have to be able to move the money. You cannot move the money in China. And there's just a fundamental contradiction. If the Chinese Communist Party were to allow free movement of money into and out of China, it would lose control. It cannot lose control. It's a Communist Party. And so it's not going to allow free movement of money. And it's not going to become a reserve currency.
Well, but it's kind of positioning this new digital yuan, right? I think we think, many people I've spoken with think that this is going to be their play.
Well, and they are trying. So what they're trying to do is they do obviously a lot of trade, and most of their trade is done actually in dollars. And what they want to do is to shift so that if they're selling something from China to El Salvador or whoever it happens to be, that the payment is not in dollars but in RMB, and they want to make it RMB, and having a digital RMB will facilitate all that.
Which then they can tie to their social credit structure.
They can tie to the social credit structure.
Yeah,
exactly right. But again, you get back to the fundamental point is, okay, you can make your payments in some currency, but what are you holding your reserves in? And if you're holding your reserves in a circumstance in which the reserves can't be moved, or can't be activated, you don't have reserves. And that's the fundamental conundrum or contradiction of the Communist Party notion of reserve currency.
So Clyde, this is actually really fascinating. It reminds me of something that I actually learned reading your book, which I wasn't fully aware of. And that was, Hank Paulson's with Goldman, when he was working, I guess, as the head of the Asian division of Goldman Sachs, foray into China in the 90s, and kind of what he did with the state-owned enterprises. And I don't know, it's sort of unclear to me whether he was fully aware of what he was doing even. But you maybe tell me a little bit about this.
I think that Hank suffered and still suffers from the illusion that China wants to become and is becoming a market economy. And what Hank did for the Chinese was, so at that time, Zhu Rongji was the main guider of the Chinese economy. And Xu's problem was that China had decided to go onto kind of the capitalist road, or use more market forces, and they had all of these state-owned enterprises. And the state-owned enterprises, remember, we think of them as corporations, but they had schools and hospitals and cafeterias, and I mean they were like a whole community. And Xu was trying to clean them up, and his strategy was to just close down the ones that were the worst or that were or unnecessary, but on the other hand, to rebuild and redo and make stronger those that were considered necessary and had great longer-term potential. And you think of, here's Yuan, and he's the top Chinese economy guy, but China has never had a real market economy, and there's not a lot of people there who know how to run it, and particularly how do you finance it? I mean, they've just been taking the money out of the government account and giving it to the state-owned enterprises. So how do you really get money into these things? And Hank shows up, and Hank says, no problem at all. We'll do a public offering. We'll write up some shares for state-owned enterprise number one, and we'll just take out to New York and we'll float it on the New York market, and investors will buy the shares, and you'll have the money. The Chinese just love Hank. They just love Hank, and they paid him well. But it's all built on finding a way to take American money and put it into state-owned enterprises to rejuvenate state-owned enterprises. I mean, state-owned, not private enterprises, but state-owned enterprises that are going to stay state-owned enterprises in China. And of course, Hank gets rewarded, and Zhu Rongji got rewarded, and the Chinese economy gets rewarded. And George Soros is saying, well, you know what? Maybe the American investor is not going to get rewarded.
Well, and we've seen that also with these recent sort of IPOs that basically got cut off at the feet.
Yeah,
right?
they just cut them off, right? Exactly.
Right at the knees.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, what she has done in the last couple of months is really remarkable in terms of really sending. You couldn't send a more direct, louder signal to the global investor world about what the reality of China is than what she has done in the last several months. And yet, Larry Fink is taking $1 billion to put into investment in China. So go figure. She isn't kidding. He's not hiding anything.